Hello. Today I'm going to share a story related to the Buddha's parinirvana. The reason I'm sharing this story is that there's a program I really like. It's a program on YouTube that reads books for you. But I noticed that they covered a topic about Buddhism this time, and they expressed it as the Buddha passed away due to diarrhea. And then I saw the announcers next to them laughing, and I wondered if that expression was inappropriate. I don't think it was completely wrong. And then I saw the announcers next to them laughing, and I wondered if that expression was wrong. It wasn't completely wrong, but there are symbolic meanings behind it. Let me elaborate on that a bit more. This is the Buddha's expression. Jesus, at the age of 80, expressed that his body was like an old cart. He had become that frail and weak. At the age of 80, he expressed that his whole body was like an old cart. He had become that frail, so he knew he was approaching parinirvana and departed. It's a kind of journey to parinirvana, a journey preparing for death. Then he received an offering. According to the records, it was food that contained a bit of pork. Buddhism, fundamentally, is not vegetarian, even though we, as Korean Buddhists, might naturally think of it that way. The reason is that there is an obligation to accept any offerings given by fellow Buddhists. So, when you received that food, you were fully aware of what kind of food it was. That's because there is an obligation to accept any offerings given by fellow Buddhists. So when he received that food, he was fully aware of what kind of food it was. He knew that eating that food could lead to his passing. At the moment he ate that food, he knew it could lead to his passing. So I put it this way. The last person to make an offering was a man named Jonda, and we knew for sure that the food he gave us was poisoned. However, it would be better to understand it as spoiled rather than poisoned. Because when Jonda offered the food, he prepared it well. But the ingredients were a bit spoiled. After receiving the food, the Buddha said that this food would be hard to digest due to the heat. He must have prepared other things as well, right? To offer to other beings, he specifically instructed to dig a hole and bury the other food, covering it with dirt. What does that mean? What happens if someone else eats it? This means that it was a big deal. This food was your last offering. Everything has its time and triggers, right? That food was a trigger. The body has its own immune response. So what happens when you eat something that doesn't agree with you? It expels everything. He nearly exhausts. Everyone starts to worry, his disciples and Jonda. What did the Buddha say? Something serious happens. The body has its own immune response. So what happens when you eat something that doesn't agree with you? So he reaches tiredness, and then everyone starts worry. His disciples and Jonda is worried. At that moment, what did the Buddha say? If he had eaten that food and passed away, thousands of disciples following him, if the Buddha had eaten that food and died, what would have happened to the person who offered that last meal? He would die, right? They would definitely die because there are not only the Buddha's disciples, but also countless kings. Those kings wouldn't tolerate it. How could you let the Buddha pass away? That person would be punished. But the Buddha was aware of that too. As he was entering nirvana after eating that food, he gave a special teaching just in case that the person who offered the food might be harmed. He says that among the offerings, all made to the Buddha, there are two special offerings. One is the offering from Sujata, right before attaining enlightenment, and the other is the offering from Jonda, who provided me with my last meal. That's why he insists on saying it. Why is that? Yes, as you might guess, Jonda's life. This was the teaching he gave out of concern that the kings or other disciples might harm Jonda's life. You could actually say that even if he hadn't passed away because of that food, but rather due to something else, I can imagine, the situation would have been the same. From this, we can see that the Buddha had an incredible sense of compassion. He embraced the person who offered him harmful food, and he even made arrangements just in case that person might suffer after his passing into nirvana. We can see that he took all these precautions. It was expressed in the program that he died because of diarrhea. Things like that were actually made fun of and humorously expressed in the program, but that is not the case. The reason I'm making this video is that I worry many people might understand the Buddha's passing too simplistically, thinking he died from diarrhea, and I want to address that. Looking at that background and the stories that followed, we can see that the Buddha's passing into Nirvana was even more sacred and that he showed immense compassion.